Hey freaks, it's JJ. Welcome to my channel where I talk about the stories behind some of my favorite concept albums. Today I am beginning a series on the Ayreon universe. So I've been wanting to do videos on, the Ayreon universe for a while now, mostly just because I think that Arjen Lucassen is just like a creative genius. And like the world that he's built with his music is just, it's intricate and it's beautiful and it all like weaves together. So I'm really excited to start this series. And so if you're not familiar with Ayreon, it's a band created by Arjen Lucassen, and it's executed as like 100% a rock opera. And so that means that, there's different vocalists for each character, and each album features different guest artists. So the lineup changes every album, and, I think that's one of the things that, that makes every album unique, and it's one of the things that, you don't see very many bands doing these days, is like these amazingly, intricate and, like space opera type albums. And so I'm going to be starting off with, the beginning. I'm starting with Ayreon's debut 1995 album, The Final Experiment. So most of this story I put together by one, Arjen's website. He has the little abridged version of the stories that go behind his concepts on his website. Also, I found an Ayreon fandom website, which has been immensely helpful in putting together the concept for this video. So I'll link both those sources down in the description if you want to take a look. But also, I based a lot of this story concept on my interpretation of the lyrics. So it's kind of a conglomeration of what the official word says the story is about, what other fans have interpreted the story as, and what I personally interpret the story as. So here we go. So we start off with track 1, Prologue. And so here we hear this narrator who identifies himself as Merlin from the year 2084. He explains that humankind has basically collapsed, and humanity's only hope for survival is this, final experiment where, this time telepathy has been developed by scientists in order to send information across time and space. And, they developed this message to be sent kind of at random to, whoever it happens to land upon in the past. And so whoever receives this message that, explains like the devastating future that is to come, that person will be responsible for, using this knowledge to hopefully change the outcome of the future. And so we find that this time telepathy message has been received by a blind British minstrel in the 6th century AD by the name of Ayreon. Sorry if I'm talking too fast. I have a tendency to do that. I'm going to try and slow it down. We go to track number 2, The Awareness. So here we meet Ayreon, who has just received, this massive communication from the final experiment. He begins, experiencing all these visions, which he believes are from, these lords of time, as he interprets them. At first, he's not really sure what he's going to do. He sees all this violence and death and destruction. And as the vision becomes more vivid, he soon comes to understand that this is a vision of the future. And, as you can maybe possibly imagine, for a man who has spent his entire life, as a blind person, this is a pretty intense experience for him. It's pretty insane to suddenly be able to see, but only be able to see this, like, gory, awful, vision of humanity's future. So we then go into track number 3, Eyes of Time. So after the vision is ended, Ayreon is left to try and make sense of what he's just seen. He attempts to explain what he saw to the people of his village, but he can't quite put it into words just yet. He's still, reeling from this terrifying experience and trying to puzzle out what it might mean. And he's not sure if he can even trust these visions. He begins to even entertain the idea that perhaps he's gone insane. That then takes us into track number 4, The Banishment. So the villagers gather to try and determine if Ayreon is, a prophet or a heretic. So basically they end up going after him like a witch hunt, and they decide that he is an instrument of evil and possibly like possessed by a demon or something, and they begin to fear him and castigate him for having angered God. And so then they drive him out of the village with, the torches and pitchforks, like scene you see in the movies, or at least that's what I imagine. So then Ayreon is kind of left to just wander in the forest alone, blind, and, helpless to some extent. So he's kind of, about to give up, but he's kind of inspired by this inexplicable drive to, push on and push forward. He can't quite shake this feeling of needing to complete his task, even though he's not quite sure, what that task is and or how he's going to accomplish it. It's kind of the driving force that keeps him pushing forward. We then get to track number 5, Ye Courtyard Minstrel Boy. I love the name of this track, first of all. It's just fun to say. Ye Courtyard Minstrel Boy. And the way it's sung is great, too. Anyway, sorry. So Ayreon, being, a well-known minstrel, he finds his way to King Arthur's court. And, through the assistance of this nobleman who kind of helps him out, the nobleman suggests that Ayreon should sing a song before the court, and he suggests something that is, vivid and interesting enough to capture their attention. So that takes us right into track number 6, Sail Away to Avalon, which is one of my favorite tracks on the album. Ayreon, inspired by his recent visions, of course, decides to sing a song about the future that he has seen of the Knights of the Round Table and their quest for Avalon and the Holy Grail. So he sings this beautiful, foretelling song, that obviously very much applies to the people in the courtroom. However, unseen to Ayreon, there's these forces working against him. Merlin, who is the, 16th century Merlin, the Merlin of Arthur's court, the Merlin of the past, basically. Not the same Merlin who is the narrator at the beginning of, in the prologue. It gets a little confusing because there's Merlin's different time periods. So this is like the classic wizard Merlin from back in the day. He hears this song that Ayreon is singing, but he ends up telling the court that Ayreon has foretold a false future. Perhaps he does this, maybe out of jealousy, because, Ayreon has this ability to see the future, and perhaps, he's, jealous of that, and so he convinces himself that this is all fake. So anyway, Merlin tells the court that Ayreon is a fake, and Ayreon is then thrown out of the castle. So Sail Away to Avalon is basically, the whole, Knights of the Round Table, really is reminiscent of, themes that take place in the next album, which is Into the Electric Castle. So I don't want to get ahead of myself in talking about that and how things are linked in the universe just yet. But if you want to hear that video sooner, I will eventually get through all the albums in this series. But if you want to hear about that sooner, join my metalhead community, link down in the description, and let me know that you want to see that sooner. Otherwise, I might kind of spread it out throughout the year. But basically, my metalhead community, I'll take suggestions from there for the most part with these videos moving forward. So it's not a Patreon or anything, so it doesn't cost anything. It's just a email list, and also you'll get a link to a whole playlist of bonus videos that I do for my community. Anyway, yeah, do that if you want these videos sooner. If that makes sense. I don't know. Okay, sorry. Back on task here. Track number 7, Nature's Dance. So, in the next scene, we find Ayreon in the Garden of Dreams, which is this area surrounding Camelot. And, Ayreon kind of just lets himself relax a little bit, meditate on, the tranquility of the garden. But, his enjoyment is interrupted by, memories of these visions that he's had. Now that he's gotten a taste of what it's like to see, obviously he wants to see more, but he wants to see the real world. He doesn't want to see all these, horrifying visions. And so I think perhaps this desire to, not be blind anymore is part of what drives him to finally accept his fate and, cross the threshold to his journey. In writer terms, this is the hero embarking on the journey and accepting the call to action. But yeah, I think part of what makes him decide that he's going to do what he can to change the world and to use these visions for humanity's good, I think a part of that is driven by this power that he gets by finally being able to see. We then move on to track number 8, Computer Rain, Game Over. So after accepting his role as, like this last hope for humanity, Ayreon then, slips into another vision of the future. This time he's maybe a little bit more prepared for what he sees. But he discovers that computers have taken over the world and machines have replaced humans. So Ayreon is appalled and absolutely horrified by what he sees. This causes him to be extremely committed to, enacting change in the outcome of the future. We then go on to track number 9, Wargle. Ayreon then kind of goes into another vision in a similar format, but this time he sees war just ravaging the planet. Decade after decade, century after century, there's continually war going on, and eventually it escalates to the point where he then sees a single man who pushes a button and ends all of humanity. It kind of is along the lines of if everyone were to detonate their weapons of mass destruction at the same time, the Earth would be destroyed. So I think that's kind of what he sees in this vision. Track 10, Listen to the Waves. Ayreon then vows to spread word of the Earth's eventual demise. He, goes around trying to warn of the apocalypse at the hands of man due to, the carelessness of humanity, basically. And then we go right into track number 11, Magic Ride. So Ayreon is being pulled out of another one of his visions, but, as time has gone on, he doesn't quite feel like he's seen enough to be able to help humanity change its fate. And he, begs whoever has sent him these visions, these lords of time, he implores them for, a better way to change the future. What good is it to glimpse the future and see all the devastating stuff that's going to happen if you can't actually do anything to change it? He's only one man, how is he supposed to change the entire way that humans operate and, natural human reactions to things and the, selfishness and carelessness that goes on, how can he change the entire thought process of humanity when he's the only one who can see these visions, and he's the only one who is experiencing this life-changing revelation. He knows he was chosen at random, by this final experiment, but he also can't help but feel like it was sent to the wrong person for the task. Track 12, Merlins Will. So Merlin again hears of Ayreon's crazy rantings about the end of the world and how people need to change to save it. Merlin grows pretty enraged, believing that these prophecies are completely false, and so he condemns Ayreon to be erased from history and his crazy ramblings silenced once and for all. And then that takes us right into track number 13, Charm of the Seer. And this is probably actually my favorite track on the whole album. If you're only going to listen to one track on this album, I think it should be this song. It's fantastic. Anyway, Ayreon knows that he's not going to be able to complete his mission. He's done what he can, but he can't change the fate of the world by himself, and especially with Merlin going around undoing any impact he has on the people. So Ayreon, he kind of accepts that he will ultimately fail in the end. But at the same time, he can't stop these visions from tormenting him. Earlier he wanted, to be able to see again, and he was pretty stoked on that. But now that he sees only horror in the form of visions of this terrible future, he's maybe I don't want to see anymore, if I can't do anything about it, and I've tried my best, but there's nothing more I can do, he just doesn't want to be tortured by it anymore. So he, kind of wishes for a single moment of respite, and knows that the only way to really end these visions is to eventually surrender to Merlin and die. So then we get to track 14, Swan Song, which is an instrumental track for the most part. This is where Merlin casts his spell to silence Ayreon. And I read this theory on, I think, one of the fandom pages that he does this spell to, basically kill Ayreon, but at the last moment he maybe shows some mercy and grants Ayreon's wish to be free of the burden of the visions. So this mercy kind of allows Ayreon to have, one last moment of peaceful serenity before he dies. And I thought that was a cool concept and a cool theory. We then get to the 15th and final track on this album, where the whole story is just kind of tied up in a nice little knot for us. Its track is called Ayre's Fate. And so Ayreon, allows Merlin to cast a spell over him so that the visions can finally stop. He accepts that he's going to die, but before he dies, he really just wants Merlin to understand that he was never lying about the future, and that, he just wants him to know that the visions are real. Merlin denies this whole time, but as he's cursing Ayreon, he suddenly gets a vision that proves that Ayreon has been telling the truth the whole time. And so he possibly tries to end the curse, but, by the time that he realizes this, the damage is done. There's nothing more he can do, and Ayreon dies. So, Merlin then grieves for, this horrible mistake that he's made. So, to atone for what he's done, Merlin vows to bring Ayreon's truth to the 20th century in the hopes of, spreading word to change the outcome of the future. So, therefore, this album, how I like to look at it is, this album serves as, the gospel of Ayreon, in that it's, then placed into the listener's hands to, heed the warning of Ayreon's prophecy. So, it's pretty cool how it all, ties back up. I like that it's then interactive with the audience, and that it's now up to you. He kind of hands this task that Ayreon had to whoever's listening. So the whole theme obviously is, of course, we need to treat each other better, we need to treat the earth better, and to try and stop pollution and global warming and war and all that stuff, and to be mindful of just how much technology we use, and it's just a good humanitarian message, of course. And I think the overall theme is very pertinent and very cool. And yeah, it's just I think it's a good way to drive home this message of humanitarian effort in a very science fiction fantasy type of concept. So kudos to Ayreon for putting together this amazing concept. It really only gets more intricate and astounding from here as far as the universe goes. So yeah, let me know when you want to hear the next installment, which is Into the Electric Castle. I will do that as soon as you guys want to hear it, I guess. So if you had a different interpretation of the concept of this album, if you thought the story should go another way, or if you just interpreted the songs in a different way, please let me know down in the comments. I'm always interested to hear how you guys thought the concept would be, or how you envision things, and how it might differ from, the story that I've laid out here. So yeah, let me know those, and then also don't forget to join my Metalhead community, yada yada yada. Hit subscribe if you want to get notified when I put out the next Ayreon concept album explained, and yeah, thanks so much for watching. Till next time, freaks.